Alright, this tutorial we're going to be covering baking out our texture maps from our model. So before you start, you're going to need a few programs open. You're going to need your Mudbox open with your high-res character. You're going to need your 3D Max open with your low-res character. And you're going to need either XNormal or a different tool. This particular tutorial is going to cover XNormal. If you'd like to use 3D Max or Mudbox, you'd have to look it up. I mean, I could go through them, but I really recommend you use XNormal. It works really great. It's free. The link is on Blackboard as well, so just download it. Just Google XNormal if you don't want to go on Blackboard. Just give it a download, and it's a pretty great tool, so it's good to have if you're going to be modeling anything, so it doesn't, not just for characters. A few steps. You can open up your low poly model in 3D Max. I gave you guys this little lighting template. It's on Blackboard as well. It's not the final one that I expect you guys to use for your characters, but it's a good one for now to view normal maps and things like that. So if you hit render, it'll render off a nice 1080p shot of your character, and this way we can kind of compare before and after normal maps and all that. So have this guy open. We have your character broken up into two pieces, the head and the body. We're going to be making two different textures for those different parts. What you're going to need to do is name your pieces. So name it head, head low usually, and then body low, and export each of these separately out onto your desktop or some working folder that you have. We're not going to need these files. We just need them temporarily, so you don't need to hang on to them. So select your head, go to File, Export, Export Selected, find a place to put them, and export them out as an OBJ. And call your whatever this is going to be head low. So I already have them export here, so it's going to be head low. When that gets exported, you can exclude export materials and create material library because we don't need any of that stuff, and mimic these settings here. Most of it you won't need to do anything to, but just make sure that's there. And just hit export, and when it's done, just click done. You'll be okay. You'll be good to go. So that's pretty much all you need to do for that. Do the same thing for the body. And once you have both of those exported, pop on over to Mudbox. So in Mudbox, we're going to take a look at our character here, and we're going to just export this entire character as one. We're not going to need different versions of him. Just he's not broken up that way, so it doesn't really matter. So the most important thing coming out of Mudbox is make sure all of your different elements are on their highest subdivision level. Right, you want to export it with all your details, all your scratches, and whatever else you've done to your character. So make sure, hover over each section, hit page up a bunch of times until it says highest up on the top right, and when you're ready to go, go into your objects list here, select your entire character. I deleted all the non-retopoed parts of my character in case you have those in there. Once he's all selected yellow, go to File, Export Selection, and export him on the desktop as well as in OBJ format as whatever character -high, just so you know which one's which. Let that export, and when it's done, you can either close down Mudbox or just have it hidden in the back. And we'll be moving on to XNormal. So XNormal, it's a funny looking program. It's a bit old style design-wise. It works really great, and it's fairly simple to use even with all these tools that they have here. We're actually going to be using only a small part of it. Your very first thing you're going to do is on the top right here, you're going to select High Definition Meshes. This little guy will open on this black screen. Just right click, go to Add Meshes, and add your character.high OBJ. Then on your top right, select Low Definition Meshes, right click again, and just add one of your low poly meshes, so for instance the head. And under Bake Options, you're going to select your output file up on the top here, and so just name it whatever you want, head or whatever. By default it should be set to TGA. If it's not, make sure that's what you're exporting out as. That's what we use in the games industry primarily. So just export as that, hit save. And we're going to be exporting two different types of textures. We're going to be exporting a normal map and an ambient occlusion map. And I'll show you what those look like in a second. The very first thing you're going to want to do is do just a test bake. These do take a long time. So I would recommend doing like a 512 or so in the beginning. So select your size here as 512 on both sides, and turn your anti-aliasing to just 1. Anti-aliasing will definitely crank up your render times, and what you want is just to have a nice quick render at first. And just hit generate. It'll run through its paces, let it do its thing, and in the end you're going to get 2 different textures. Let me show you what those are going to look like. Number 1, you have your ambient occlusion. Oh, this is going to be in Photoshop. For some reason Windows doesn't open TGAs in its Explorer window. So this is your ambient occlusion map. It's basically it's kind of just like a white and black texture, and it kind of anything that's raised above your model is going to just be white, and anything that has divots in it, like your hair, scratches, things like that, eyes, will get occluded from lighting and kind of get a little darker. And this really just is a nice base for us to texture off of. It just looks really good right off the bat. So it's something that we generate when we do characters and other models. The other one you're going to have is your normal map. So it's going to be this one here, and that's just all your height information and angle information for all the details that you're pulling off of your mesh. So you're going to get those 2 baked out. I would recommend calling them like head low or something at first if you want to hang on to them. If you don't, that's fine too. And we're going to open up 3D Max. We're going to select our head here and just make a new material, put it on top of, apply it to your head. You can name it accordingly. And open up the maps dialog here on the bottom. I know you guys are probably used to using the slate editor a little bit more. This is the compact view. Under your diffuse, you're going to add a bitmap, and then you're going to select your goblin head occlusion. And then under bump map, you're going to select normal bump at first. And then in that, under the normal section here, you're going to add a bitmap again, and you're going to select your normal map that got generated from your character. And go all the way to the top of your material, and then select show material, shaded material in viewport. And now you'll see right off the bat we already have decent looking character. This is even without rendering. And then when you render them, all the normal maps will show up as well, so you kind of get to see some lighting detail on all your little elements that you sculpted in. Now this is a really small map. It's only a 512, and it doesn't have anti-aliasing kind of run through it, so it's going to look kind of crappy. You're going to have a lot of really weird little artifacts and things like that. But your most important thing is just to, in this low res mode, just to kind of look around and make sure that everything looks fine. You don't have any missing sections of your hair or your head or any part of your model, that everything, all the detail kind of looks like it's there. You might start noticing little errors, things like this, and that's okay. Some of those we'll be able to paint out. It's just only if you see really big errors that you'll have to fix up. And a lot of the big errors that will happen is if your low poly mesh doesn't completely cover your high poly mesh. If there's a lot of intersection, you might get a lot of little areas like this where it's just really black, or it's just going to be flat white as well. And your goal is just going to have to be to push out those parts and make sure they fit your high poly really well. You can even bring your low poly back into Mudbox over top of your high poly, freeze your high poly, and then just kind of push and pull some verts around and make sure that it encompasses it appropriately. When you take a look at it and you think you're happy with it, if you don't have to do any more test bakes and you're ready to go, go back into XNormal. For your head, do a 1024 by 1024. Crank the anti-aliasing up to ×2, ×4 if you really feel like waiting, and have another bake. One of the things you may or may not notice out of your bake, especially once you start doing the body and like really flat pieces like this, you may notice that the normal maps are looking really funny, and it all depends on your settings and normal map. One of the things you really need to check for is in your normal map here, there's little settings in XNormal. These are the little green box here with the 3 dots. Just click on that, and by default it'll look like this. Oops. It'll be X, Y, Z, and they all have plus signs beside them. Make sure you set the Y to minus. It's Y controls the height of your normal map, and it needs to be set to minus for it to generate properly for Unity and I believe for Unreal as well, and it'll look better in 3D Max too. So anyway, so hit bake on a higher resolution setting, and then you should have something that looks like, let me show you here. I've baked out high versions of all these guys, so we'll do that. Occlusion large, and do normal map here. That's not the large one. Oh, and still the small one. I don't know why that didn't get updated. There we go. And you can see a lot of those errors that we had are gone. There's a lot more details in here as well. It's looking pretty nice. I could probably still bake this guy out higher. I might actually bake him out as a 2048 and then just down res him myself in Photoshop. Just to get rid of some of this kind of jaggediness. Photoshop will do a nicer job bringing that down than just baking it at a lower res. But once you have that, you just take take a quick render, and something I like doing to really show, if you really want to see what your normal maps and your ambient occlusion is doing, is once you have something rendered, hit these two little guys here. It'll be clone rendered frame window, and then just slap like a gray material on them and render it off again. And it's a good kind of exercise just to take a look at your model before and after, and you really get to see how much the normal maps really do, how much they bring out all these little details, especially if you take a look at this one in the hair. This is just like a flat blob kind of look, and this actually has detail. Like my horns have little chunks missing out of them, ears have a lot of detail, all that kind of stuff. So pretty good that way. So take a look at that, and then we'll move on to the body. So same process. Pop open XNormal again. Your high definition you can just leave because we're using the same high definition source. Low definition, you're going to want to hit this clear all meshes button on the bottom. Right click, add mesh, select your goblin body low, or whatever your character happens to be called. Rename your texture just so you're not overriding your head and you'll have to redo the whole thing again. Do some test bakes, and when you're happy with that, bake out a 2048 of your body, and with a higher anti-aliasing setting, and then bake that out. And go back into 3D Max and apply it to your character, and you'll kind of get to see what the end result is at this point. Now, if you have any problems with these bakes, again, most of the time your main problem is going to be a mesh that's not quite intersecting or overlapping your high poly really well. You may have things like part of your body here might have the arms projected onto it. If you have those problems, we'll address those in class. Just let me know, but just keep in mind the different issues that we'll have and all that. For my character, I baked, even though my armor and this belt and stuff, they're all above his chest, I still baked them all together. And if you take a look at the low poly, if I hide all these guys, you'll see that underneath it's all just really black and shadowy, and just looks really, really bad. So what I might actually want to do is do another bake with my low poly, where it's just his upper body without any armor, without any different elements, and export a high poly that's the same thing, that's just the sculpt of his muscles and his chest, and then just replace this part of the texture that's clean. And that way, in game, if I want to knock off his armor or change them, I don't have to worry about it looking like this underneath. He would be a very clean character on his own, and then he would have armor on top of that as well. So, these are some of the issues that you'll run into, or things you got to think about when you're making your character. So keep them in mind, and make the best decisions you can for your character. Once you're done with this, just save them out. Make sure you save all your files as well, and we'll be ready to export into Unity and kind of take a look at what he looks like there, and put some lighting in them after that, and then we'll get to painting him in the next video series.